Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for the On The Record podcast, presented by the Western Weekender. On this podcast, I'm joined by special guests who all have such great stories to tell about Penrith and the role they've played in our city. Today my guest is Andrew Paech, the Director of Westcare, one of the major charities in Penrith and across Western Sydney. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Troy. What a delight.
Well, as always, we start with the question, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Oh, wow, that's probably a bit of a story in itself. I was actually born in the great southern state of South Australia.
Okay, there you go.
Wasn't there for long. The Labor Premier of that time, the Don Dunstan, had a great vision to build a city right where my dad's farm was. So bit of government coercement there. We had to sell that farm and move over the border into the Mallee region of northwest Victoria when I was 5. So if you've heard of that John Williamson song, The Mallee Boy, well, just think of me.
And did that city happen?
No, it did not. It was a failed venture.
So the farm was sold, but
yep.
You know what's there today? Have you ever been back there?
Yeah. It's all. They actually planted a lot of trees there and sold a lot back to farmers, believe it or not, for use. So I think it was just one of those things. It was just meant to be.
and that did have an impact, though, on your family. The movie in the state had a pretty significant impact.
It did actually, because a year later, sadly, on one level at least, my parents divorced. So that probably didn't go down through so well, but again, once again through that, different things come out of that. So my dad stayed on the farm. My brother and I lived with him. He remarried, had some other kids, which is great. My mum was quite transient, so lived in many different locations. Yeah. And
we'll get to how you ended up in Penrith eventually soon, but you are involved in, and look, we've known each other for a long time, of course, in Westcare and whatnot, but what about your teen years? Because I think you've described it as a misspent youth. I'm keen to know, because you've ended up, of course, doing so much for others through Westcare, but I'm keen to know part of, I guess, what drove that is those misspent years, as you call them.
Yeah, there's certainly some truth in that. Look, from a very young age, I probably started doing things that kids at a young age didn't. I was heavily involved. I'm not kidding, from those young age, from the age, 6, 7 onwards, in theft.
Okay.
And all kinds of stuff, even a bit of substance abuse at a very young age, and that just transitioned into, just a very, I think what you'd call a self-focused, not exactly fruitful, productive lifestyle well through my teen years. Oh, yeah.
And what do you think drove that?
I think a few different things, but I note that my father told me years later when that happened. It's pretty sad, I was 6 and my little brother was 4, and he said, "Yeah, your little brother Jason, he's sort of a bit emotional." He said, "You never showed any emotion. It's like nothing was wrong." And I think a lot of that stuff got pushed down and come out in other ways, and just opened myself up to other misguiding influences. And that eventually went on. I was certainly, with a good group of friends. Heavy cannabis users.
Okay.
That classic example of that pothead where excessive and constant, like pretty much every day for months on end, might have a few days break and back into it. Believe it or not, that's me. That was very much me in those years. Yeah.
Now, you say believe it or not, because I think people who know you today probably wouldn't say that, but do you look back on that and go, that has helped in some of the things you do today, because you probably approach it with a greater understanding, because you deal with people with a whole range of complex issues?
There is no doubt about that. So, and I think it brings certainly just that capacity to connect. We do a lot with addiction people. We support a lot of New South Wales health social workers in various age groups and scenes with addiction and many other things, but that's a definite priority for us to support that work, coming straight out of my personal development, and also in the area of youth and young people. It's funny, because I get to speak at different school things and various things, and I sometimes just explain. I remember the days back when we were mapping out what sort of job will we do and kind of careers, and I wanted something where you didn't have to think too much, where you wouldn't take away from your heavy drug-using lifestyle. That's a crazy place to be in, but that's where I was at the end of my teens. Yeah.
And what stopped that? Was it other people stopping it on your behalf, or did you decide, or did something happen that...
Look, there was a few things there. Number one, it's hard to believe I meet a lot of 21-year-olds today, and they seem a lot younger than I was at that time, but I'm not joking. At age 21, I literally felt like a bit of a burned-out hippie, and I'm not kidding, and a few of my friends from the day would that. But no, there's a massive X factor in here. Many people know my story, but after years of... Look, what it all come down to was a very profound and significant conversion to Christianity. And that really knocked a few people's expectations at that time. I mean, as a kid, I was sort of tagged along to different church stuff and really had no interest in it. In fact, I was the bad guy.
So you wouldn't say your family was overly religious?
No, my dad is, and he's a good man, very good man, and I know it was a very big disappointment to him through a few seasons of my life. They just didn't understand what had happened to this wayward son. But what's fun, I mean, I have memories, in the probably early teen years, you went to, confirmation classes, and I was a bad guy that let down the other kids' tyres and all this kind of stuff. That was my highlight of those things. And to be honest, I was quite known for a very negative view of anything religious and anything. Having said that, I always knew there was something more to life. I just had that understanding through there. So that's very much in my journey, and at that age of 21, many things came together at that time. I think I really come to that in that real valley of decision, so to speak. And at that time is when the power of that Christian gospel just nailed me. I often say, Jesus talks about he will leave the 99 sheep and come after that one. I could not think of a clearer explanation of what happened for me. He got me. He come after me and he got me, and I just know he had something for me to do.
And was that literally click your fingers and it happened, or was it something that you transitioned, I guess, more towards? There
was certainly a transition time, but there's certainly moments in that. I think often we focus on those moments, which is fair enough, but I think sometimes we need to just recognise when we've come to the end of ourselves, and there's that something that we need to dive into and to truly transform us, and that's it's on the record now. That's what happened to me. Yeah.
Now, at this point, we're in the late 80s, early 90s?
This is 1991 when I turned 21. Big year that year.
Big year because you meet your wife in that year as well.
Well, I actually met her. We were a bit of childhood sweetheart thing going on from like age 17, but that year was the big year where she come with me on that journey, and we got married that year. So which meant just a few weeks ago in mid-December 2021, we celebrated our 30th year anniversary. That's a miracle. I can hear the people cheering her on now.
so 30 years of marriage, which is pretty incredible. You got married, as you say, 1991. So that period there, then the early 90s for you and your family, what was that like?
It was extremely interesting and formative in many ways. Actually, a lot of it was based around my first job. I left school in year 11, and my first job for 10 years, a lot of things happened over that time. I literally started that job. I started an apprenticeship as a radio technician and putting up television antennas. I never passed that apprenticeship because I went to Melbourne, got into trouble. In my class were drug dealers, so look out. But however, that 10-year period marked a transition from being an exceptionally self-focused individual. And by the end of that 10-year period, was like, no, I'm here to help. There's a purpose here, and it's others focused. Certainly that sense of, beyond that divine. And where do we go from here? So that 10-year period, that's it's a great indicator that there was definite transformation from being self-focused to very much others-focused.
And professionally, you I speak to a lot of people. They say to me that you'd be perfect in this corporate role and that corporate role around Penrith. They want to get you out of the charity sector, but you have done the corporate world, pretty significantly. Some of the biggest companies in the world.
Look, a fun part of my journey. I mean, just a bit of a segue in there as well. Part of my just personal journey, because we very much, country people. Even when we lived in Western Victoria, we'd just never go to Melbourne. Who want to go there? We're country folk. But in the midst of all that, because I'd finished schooling early, and like year 11, and I just always had that sense there's some bigger thing to get my head into, and why not? I went big picture, and I enrolled in a theology degree, a Bachelor of Theology in Southern Cross College, which happened to be in Sydney. So with my I think my daughter's around 6 months old, my son 2, Josiah and Indigo, we, our little family, migrated to Chester Hill in Western Sydney.
Now I know Chester Hill pretty well. My grandmother, my dad grew up in Bass Hill, and my grandmother and my uncle lived in Bass Hill for many years. So Chester Hill was often the place you'd have to go to catch the train and whatever else. So know that area very well. So you've ended up there.
Yeah, well, it was the college, Southern Cross College, is now called, and it's moved. It's now called Alpha Crucius. Many would know that. It's based in Parramatta, great organisation. But back then it was Southern Cross that actually purchased an Air Force accommodation base at Chester Hill. So that's where it come from. So here we are, and mind you, the original plan from day one was to come up, get some kind of education or, infilling of great wisdom and then return to the country. Just after we moved up here, I knew we were not going back. We were just meant to be in Sydney. I had no idea what that means. You often hear about the great stories of faith, great Abraham leaving his, place of his ancestors. That's us in profound ways. But I didn't know what that was. So, just as things transpired, I finished that degree. And what do you do after you finish a 3.5 year theology degree? I joined Coca-Cola. And what a ride I had with Coke.
And is this in the sales world of Coca-Cola?
Well, the original thing was I had been doing a bit of sales contracting for and you talk about cutting your teeth in sales. I had been, imagine this for a job, Troy. Imagine someone coming around to your home as an ex-Telstra home customer, okay? Someone knocks at your door between 2 o'clock in the afternoon and 8 o'clock at night, and their mission is to sign you back to Telstra. Now, I did that for 3 months, specifically for personal development. I felt it was something I had to do. No one understood that at that time. But again, it's been many of these experiences on this great faith journey.
Potentially no tougher gig than that. I remember between gigs at one point, I was looking for a job somewhere, and I did a trial doing a very similar thing in the electricity industry, trying to make people switch to a different electricity provider, and you just get bundled into a car, driven to a suburb that you'd just never been in Sydney before, and all right, start walking the streets. Safe to say I didn't actually complete the trial, and when I said to them, I don't think this is for me, he dropped me at a bus stop. And I really didn't even know where I was in Sydney, but good on you for 3 months, because it's knocking on people's doors. You have no idea what's behind the door, and you're probably the last person they want to see.
Oh, I tell you what, I think people say I'm a particularly gracious person, but let me tell you, when someone comes around my place knocking at that time of day trying to sell something, they're not welcome. But particularly the mission there to sign ex-Telstra people back to Telstra, so it's crazy. However, I knew beforehand it was personal development. Now, at that time, I was doing this in the afternoons and evenings. Meanwhile, my lovely wife, Delwyn, had been a motorbike postie, so she was out in the mornings. So, to be honest, at the end of that period, I thought, what's next? And was like, okay, I just need something to settle down for a few months, just a 9 to 5 kind of job, and we work out what the next step is on this great life journey. And there happened to, we were living at South Wentworthville at that time. There happened to be something advertised, did not say the company, and it was just a contact centre type job. I thought, you know what, I'll just do that for a month or 2 or 3 and we'll see what's next. What I had no idea until I'd done the interview at the agency was it was Coca-Cola Amatil in Northmead. And before you know it, they were looking for two people with a background in a bit of sales, bit of good customer service, and me and this other young lady joined a special team with the New South Wales vending team. Before you know it, I had become the first. The Coca-Cola vending team is a unique team. It's their highest sort of retail earnings. It's the only part of their business that sells direct retail and very profitable. And suddenly I was one of those area sales. There was 5 across all of Sydney.
So this is in getting vending machines into locations?
Yes, it is, and in the corporate, in a whole range of business environments, and it was just an incredible adventure for me, to be honest. So I don't believe probably anyone has had a journey like I had at Coca-Cola, Amatil, and all kinds of things happen. And the opportunities that would come my way. For instance, back when my beautiful daughter Indigo was sick, she actually well, this is a bit sad and a bit serious, but turned out okay. She had a brain tumour, and she qualified for a Make-A-Wish Foundation thing, and she wanted to go to the Gold Coast theme parks.
Yep.
She'd never been there, so we did that on the first week of November that year. The day I arrived back in our office, something was wrong, and the market manager of the vending of New South Wales, he called me in, and I thought, what have I done wrong? There's something serious here. And he explained that one of the district managers in the fulfilment team had been busted drink driving the week I was away, and they needed to second someone in immediately before summer and not re-advertise the role. And even though I was the last salesperson on the team, I was the first they picked up, and that was a huge promotion in that upset some of the other sales guys. They couldn't understand it, but he'd noticed that I had a good connection with the filling contractors, which a lot of the salespeople normally didn't. And anyway, this great journey continued on. We did all kinds of crazy stuff, but great journey there. And then I actually joined a friend in business for a while. That didn't work out. And then I ended up working for Visy, actually for corrugated carton products. They're based in Penrith. And 35 people went for that role, and thankfully I got it because I just needed a job that was based in Penrith with a car, and it was just a great job at Visy.
Because at that point you'd obviously moved to Penrith
Yes.
somewhere in the line. We'll get to that in a moment, but just to date back, obviously that would have been a difficult time for your family as well. You said your daughter who was 6 at the time.
Yes, that was pretty tough there because she's a sweet girl, and she's the sweetest girl you'll ever meet. And she thank God for my wife, who literally took her to 5 or 6 doctors. And in the end, they said, we're going to book him for a scan at Westmead. Now, I was working around the corner at Coke, and I'd got there a little bit late. And anyway, they'd gone in and had the scans, and I waited from when they come out. They were just pushing her in a wheelchair. Not that I don't think she needed a wheelchair. I was and my wife took my hand because she had seen something on the scan, and we went to the emergency room there. And the doctor eventually brought in the scans and showed a 4.5 centimetre diameter tumour was there. They didn't know what it was at that time, whether it was benign or a bit more serious. And I'm not joking. I'm not into out-of-body experiences or anything weird like that, but I'm telling you right now, in that moment, faster than you could blink your eye, I was taken to the top corner of the room, and I'm telling you now, a voice told me, this child shall live and shall not die. And through that period, I was also assured that she would be a blessing to a generation. Now, that's a bit out there for people, let me tell you. It was a medulloblastoma. It's a very serious tumour. We met a lot of children with less severe instances that she had. They all died. Very sad. Or several died, and things like that happen. But she subsequently went on and had the full, the brain surgery, the radiation, the chemotherapy. And cut a long story short, she is now a blessing to a generation. She's teaching today at Penrith Christian School, and she has a gift for young children. Their parents tell me that. So she's taught at a couple of schools locally here. So that's turned out to be a good news story, believe you me.
Absolutely. From tough times comes a great result, and that's a very difficult time to go through. I mean, and tough for a 6-year-old, 7-year-old to understand what's going on as well.
It's a tough sort of thing, and mind you, it was whilst she was literally in recovery from surgery that an email come through advertising the Coke vending roll. So how these things work. But anyway, and that was a great journey. And then a friend of mine, a manager actually I'd worked with at Coke, he was now working for Chamberlain, which is the world's largest manufacturer of garage door openers.
Yep.
And cut a long story short, I had a great time at Chamberlain. I think it was 7 or 8 years there. And but what I must highlight through all this is, again, I like to believe I live this life. Look, I'm not the one writing the book. Someone else is writing this book, and a lot of these things all work together for good, for this purpose. And I used to think, look, I know I've been put here to really help people and do a lot of things. I just had that sense. Did not know what that was. I just thought it'd be some kind of Christian ministry thing or what. I just did not know. And here I am. I'd be driving out to, Canberra, Bateman's Bay, Griffith, whatever, and thinking, is this really what I'm meant to be doing? I love this job. I love the people. And really it was you're looking after your dealer network. So I'd go to, say, Wagga, and there'd be Troy and Stacey as our Merlin dealers for Chamberlain there, and I'd go down the road and there'd be, John and Diane at Bateman's Bay, and over the years you're quite close, and it's not like a salesy thing at all, it's more relational based. Anyway, little did I know that all of that was to prepare me for these days to come.
Now tell me about the decision or how you end up in Penrith, because in the midst of all of this, you somehow end up in Penrith, and so begins a journey that continues today.
A profound journey there once again, and again it all comes out of this lovely faith-based lifestyle, I must say, but because keeping in mind, I'd just done a theology degree, and I was thinking, and I was helping to start a great little church in Parramatta and helping them, and it's like, well, I don't know. I just know we're meant to go somewhere. I don't know. Where is it? Sounds when I hear people talk like this sometimes, they sound a little bit, a little bit fruity or something. This is not fruity. This is very real. We knew we were on a quest here somewhere. And anyway, somehow we were led to attend. Back then it was called Penrith Christian Life Centre with Jack Haynes and the crew at Orchard Hills, and eventually they changed their name to the name of their conference at that time, which is called Imagine Nations Church. So that is the reason how we come to be in Penrith, number one, and certainly led to how we come to be at Westcare. Yeah.
Okay. And so what was the decision, though, to move to Penrith? What did you say? Penrith's where we can be.
It was, the first step was I simply knew, my wife and I knew, that we were meant to attend that local church at Penrith. Mm-hmm. And we based that move 100% around that at that time. Okay. It was not just, we'll go to this church. No. There was, like other decisions we'd made, the decision to move to Sydney, the decision to get into these different job roles, there was something else. And it's just as genuine as I can express. That's simply how it was. And because there had come a time back when I was that 21-year-old, pothead, that I had said, no, I no longer live for myself. And once you open up to live for others and then the divine, if you like, things like this happen. And, of course, now I know many people who are discovering this journey for themselves. But that's what it was, yeah. And then one day I was there because I used to travel a lot for that role. It was great. But Jack Haynes, Pastor Jack Haynes, he's a great guy who heads up Imaginations. He saw me one day then. He said, are you around this week? You want to catch up for a coffee? I thought, absolutely I was, and I just knew there was an edge to that as well. I thought, now have I done or said something a bit wrong? No, it's funny how you often, that's that young 6-year-old again coming out. Yes. But no, I knew something was going on, and we had a good coffee in Glenmore Park there, and he explained, because he's also the chairman of the Westcare board, and he said, look, we're looking to make some changes at Westcare. And we're actually looking to put a full-time person on and a few other things. And he said, is that something you would be interested in? And he knew it too, I think. He absolutely nailed me. I knew that this was the thing.
So at that point, though, going into working in a charity at Westcare, this is about 2013, 2014?
Yes, that conversation was June 2013, but I began at Westcare in January 2014, so I've just crossed over 8 years, yeah.
And interestingly, you at this point are in pretty good sales roles, yes. And I imagine with that comes a pretty good living as far as financially is concerned.
Definitely.
I'm not sure that that charity gigs pay as much. Was that a tough call? Was that a tough decision?
It should have been a tough call. In fact, I went home from that coffee because I told Pastor Jack on the spot. I said, "Oh yeah, I'm in." I hadn't even consulted with my wife. Now, is that a very unwise man? But thankfully, when I got home and told her, she knew. Thank God for that. Because what it also meant was my salary had been slashed under half. And not only that, it was at the stage in that timeline with the world there where my salary is about to leap up a lot more. And they reminded me of that. They knew I wasn't leaving this for money purposes. And I had great relationships with that organisation, and they would cheekily remind me from time to time in my first year or two the kind of salary that I would be on if I was still there and opportunities, cheekily. But everyone knew it was not about the money. And what's remarkable is that, day to day, bottom line stuff, we really did not see the difference. At that time, Delwyn, who'd been on her own journey, and now she'd done a Bachelor of Fine Arts with honours, and she began teaching, and just a few things just come together there. Day to day, it's hard to believe with such a loss of income, but we were provided for in ways that it just there was a continuum. It's remarkable.
Out of interest, those roles that you did at Chamberlain, do they still exist in the modern times? Because I know things are a lot different these days.
No, they do. I mean, a lot of, because I'm still in contact with that world a bit, so things with the COVID and everything, that's certainly changed a lot of dynamics, but now they're back on the road, those travelling guys. So those roles certainly exist in that. The Coca-Cola world's changed a lot. That many, it's a long time ago, but that Chamberlain corporate model is generally still the same. Yeah. Sometimes
when people leave the big corporate world, they almost leave with a bit of a disdain for that world. But you seem to still talk with a lot of passion about those companies. Look, you don't have a Coca-Cola in front of you, but you seem to still have a lot of passion there. Like a lot of people say, that corporate world, hated it, glad I'm out, but you have a bit of passion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think because I love the people on all sides, connected well with the, not everyone does in different departments of organisations, can I say, but it's always a priority for me. And to be honest, a key to life. If you're a salesperson and you are looking after the accounts team, the warehouse team and the service team, you're a very wise move, that one. But certainly but more so than any of that, I will always recognise that that's very formative to literally make the person that I am today. And even though I'm not thinking of, strategically analysing sales things and this, that and the other, I really do not. But it's sort of been embedded through that very positive time. I remember even when I went for Coca-Cola, someone from Coke, my manager actually, asked me, because he knew of my Christian faith background. He just thought I'd hate everything corporate, and look, I'm sure a lot of things is grounds for that kind of thing, but that wasn't my experience at all. I was grateful for them, had a great experience, left well, and will always favourably love that. And there's no doubt about it, that poured into me, that formative experience, much of what I am and what I do today. Yeah,
and it is interesting that because, and then as we move into Westcare, big business has obviously helped Westcare along the way as well. I often look at that. There's often such a, big business and mega business can be looked at with a lot of disdain, but a lot of big companies do a lot of good for a lot of people.
Oh, no doubt about it.
January 2014 then, what does Westcare look like when you walk in at that point? And we'll get through to what it looks like today, but what does it look like in January 8 years ago?
Look, Westcare has always been a sweet organisation. It's like a lot of charities that operate out of great local churches, a lot of good people involved, a lot of volunteers, 3 or 4 part-time, 2, maybe 3 day a week people, on staff, but mind you, there was a history to Westcare because we proudly say that we've been serving Penrith since 1977, and that's because back in 96, 2 churches come together, which meant 2 charities come together, and one of those charities had been called Distress Call, was registered on April 1977. So there's a history there. So from day one, I've had this feeling, it's not about Westcare being built. It's like a stream that's been flowing in, and streams have come together that flow into the Penrith community. That mindset helps me, rather than just you're out there building something. And that's one reason that we like to put the background of the Nepean River on some of our promotional activity. It's not just for the local identification. It's also this sense that, hey, there's a stream of living water flowing into this place, and it's our honour to be part of facilitating that. But back then, no, the foundational service was certainly our Westcare's emergency relief service, providing food and all kinds of, to this, well, not quite at this day, which we'll go into later, I'm sure, but the emergency relief service is fully functioning, a great little op shop. Had a one little cupboard in a room, which they called our Care Packs, Care Packs division, and some great correctional care things for Emu Plains Correctional Centre, Bulwarra Homes there, and Cobham at Warrington. So that's pretty much the scope of Westcare at that day, and yes, which great work had been done for many years.
And I guess you coming on full time then allowed Westcare to expand into a whole range of other services. I guess a lot of people now would know Westcare provides a lot of assistance to domestic violence victims. Now, in that space. Why did Westcare get involved in that space? What was because it's pretty significant to your services.
It is. A few things. Keeping in mind back then we used to say restoring dignity and hope to people in need, which is sweet. We still use that from time to time, but there'd been a little tagline off the side, which was local needs met by local people. And of course, when I really sort of engaged, that was it. That's the one, because that encompasses many things about Westcare. And when it comes to domestic violence, I mean, we'd been serving one way or another around the fringes of the sector and helping refuges and things for some time, but in small practical ways. But a lot of people wouldn't realise, perhaps, is that Penrith local government area is number 2 in metropolitan New South Wales for the number of police-reported domestic violence incidents, just behind Blacktown, which is Mount Druitt. So it's a huge local need in Penrith that is incredibly underserviced. It really is a huge need which just does not get addressed anywhere near as well as it ought to. So it had been something on our hearts for a while, but this particular, what really pushed that in was, again, another coffee with Pastor Jack Haynes, our board chairman, and a couple of times over the years, but he's, great. And this particular coffee, he said, I really feel we need to really get into that space, which was music to my ears. It was something we were in and always wanting to do more in that space. So what I did then was literally immerse myself. By the way, even prior to starting at Westcare, I'd seen a presentation, and they said how a lot of charities or organisations, churches, whatever, get a great vision for an idea in their community, and they'll charge off. You know what? Half the time they haven't even consulted with all the other players that are operating in that sector, in that area, and other things like that. So from day one, I really thought it was important to really work on that. So when Pastor Jack had said, let's, from a board perspective, let's look at this, I spent, I think it was about 6 to 8 months immersing myself. They wouldn't even let me join the Nepean Domestic Violence Network, because that's only for frontline DV services. And anyway, we got through that with our friends at council, and but to this day, I'm pretty much the only male that's ever attended that meeting. There was a male policeman coming for a while, a few years ago, but it's just funny too. But again, talking, plenty of coffee catch-ups, interviews, all these frontline people, including services based in Penrith I'd never even heard of, which is a shame. And just, again, determining the needs, because we're local needs met by local people. And when you talk to the frontliners of the needs, wow! So I mapped the Fresh Start Go Penrith Domestic Violence Program in direct response to those needs ascertained by the members of the Nepean Domestic Network.
And the services that Westcare helps to provide, we're not just talking, and this is one of the great things I think about Westcare, is that if people donate to Westcare, if they support Westcare, they see the reality of the help on the ground. So sometimes you can, you want to help something and you donate to a charity, you've really got no idea where it ends up, where it goes. In Westcare's case, you are helping at the rawest level. So someone leaves a domestic violence situation and you pretty much step in and immediately. Can you take us through what happens in a case like that? And then I'm guessing, unfortunately, you've seen a lot of them over the years.
Seen some shockers, really. And mind you, the whole thing can be very complex in many, many ways. There's many sides to this often too, which, not really nice, cute stories. But again, working together. So looking at those needs, what we found was, so you'll have... Now, can I say, through our direct channels, our emergency relief, few other channels, we get the occasional, like a lot of people say, yeah, I'm in domestic violence, and you drill down and you're like, you know what, you sort of are, kind of, but oh no. So we get a small percentage through our direct channels, but oh no. The really serious situations come through other services that we're close with. And there are huge needs there. Obviously, there's a great need for accommodation. The crisis accommodation, and particularly for mums with more than a few children. So our 1,000 safe sleeps units are ideal to house large families. We launched that project originally for single homeless men, and I always felt that There's 2 units we have. Always felt the layout, and I thought, this is really not for single men, you know. You can put a couple in there, but no, this is more family-based. So what's going to happen here? So eventually, that's exactly what happened. So now we've had, it may be 5, but there's 4 or 5 women who have had 6 children fleeing very full-on domestic violence situations who have stayed in our units. They just would not be able to be safely housed anywhere else in Penrith. It's very complicated.
And I guess part of that reason is that if they were to go to a family or something, unfortunately the perpetrator can easily track them down. So for
definitely.
you, the privacy and security of those units has been
very
pretty
private,
critical.
Very hidden. It's great. And of course, that's just though we've had many with 5 kids, 4 kids, 3 kids, etc. But again, it's that particular, and we go crazy. So again, when you meet these ones, and especially kids involved, you know what? I think that string definitely ties back to my childhood too, Troy. When and our whole team feel the same, but they all know there's young ones in there, especially babies. You know, they get extra special treatment. But there's something about those kids. So our service is yes, great accommodation and you know all your personal care items, food and all this stuff. But oh no, every child who stays in our unit, they get toys to keep. They're offered toys to keep. They are offered. Our op shop is nearby, and every person who stays in our units are given vouchers for 8 items of clothing. In fact, they can have a lot more than that if they ask. But so we make sure their practical needs are serviced like no other. You will not find, I don't believe, domestic violence accommodation where they're practically cared for as much as ours. And the case management, it's done by our partners at DV West. That's Penrith's largest domestic violence service, close friends of ours for many years. So, and others engage as well. So all of this, but it's that taking them, and I don't get to meet every one of these women. I mean, you know, but Margaret certainly does, our emergency support services manager. I call her the Mother Teresa of Penrith. She has a gift for connecting with the women and connecting with the children.
How long can someone stay in those units? Look,
it varies. We've had situations where they've stayed in there. The odd one, I mean, this is really crisis accommodation, so it's not meant to be, you know, the longer term. But we've had some situations where they've stayed in there for several months. Incredibly complex situations. We've said, you know what, they stay. They're not moving into transitional housing. We're keeping them here. They will get their most practical care here. Otherwise, they can stay. We've had, they'll stay for 2 days and they've another solution or whatever. But commonly, because when we originally set it up, we had said, 2 weeks, and we'll stretch it out to 3 if that needs to be. That just wasn't real, Many do fit within that time, but otherwise it could be 3 weeks. It fluctuates a little, yeah.
Do you have, look, I'm sure there's stories, some great stories, some great outcomes, also some poor ones, but do you, normally what keeps people going is the great outcomes. Yeah. I presume you've had stories of, hey, if it wasn't for those 2 weeks, I wouldn't be where I am today, maybe years down the track. Yeah. So that must be pretty fulfilling for everyone at Westcare, for yourself, Margaret, and the team.
No doubt about it. I mean, some of these, especially the ones you're able to really connect with. So there's one, certainly will not mention this one's name because she now lives permanently in Penrith. This young lady, excuse me, had come and she had 6 children, and she'd run away a couple of times before. And this time the male partner had been bashing her original son. She had a 19-year-old son. And now it wasn't just her he was punching and stuff. He was beating him up. And so, no, this is it, to run away forever. The little one turned 1, I think, 1 or 2 in our units while they stayed. They stayed for a while. So mum and 6 kids. We don't normally have 19-year-olds in there, but this was an approved situation. And let me tell you, that the journey that lady and her beautiful, they light the place up, and to see that's the reason we do this stuff. What happened with that family? They're just incredible. There's some really serious ones. Like, just briefly, I'll say there was a situation once again. Our team knows what I'm like with little ones, and I'd been told there was a mum with a newborn baby coming in. I said, okay. And I was coming in at that afternoon or the next day or something. And okay, so everything was geared up. We had all the baby stuff ready to go, etc. Newborn baby and a 3-year-old. And then the call come through. Oh no, it's a very serious situation, particularly aggressive domestic violence where the police were looking for the perpetrator. And she was fearful. In the end, I think it's okay to say this, she went to her parents' place up north. Just north of Sydney, and Anyway, I got that message while I was standing in the front bar of the Arms Hotel, talking to another Troy that we know, Troy.
Yes. And
I would never normally be discussing domestic violence situations with our community colleagues like that, but I just happened to mention, and I mentioned there was a particularly aggressive perpetrator, all police looking for him, and that she'd gone to her parents' house. And this, our brother, Troy Dodds, as we know him, had said, well, that's, wouldn't he find them? Wouldn't he be able to find them? Went to the parents' place, and well, guess what? That's exactly what happened. He actually tracked them down up there, followed them around, and she'd gone into a change room at a Westfield Plaza. He had attacked them. He had physically raped the mum, and the 3-year-old had witnessed all this, and gruesome situation and everything, but what really got me, that's just the worst. That's the worst story I've heard. But what really nailed it later on was Vanessa from DV West shared. Well, that girl, the time that they had her with them under their care and case management, she had not spoken since that instant. I mean, that just stays with me. That stuff. It's like, gosh. And these are that's just horrific. We see the absolute worst human behaviour imaginable on one end of the spectrum, and then I must say, through the support of others and just different people who just live to serve in this place, we see the absolute best of human behaviour. And if we can somehow play a role in bringing all that together, let me tell you, we've achieved our purpose.
And some of the best you speak of obviously comes from the way that the Penrith community has responded to Westcare. Now, Westcare now has a whole bunch of different services. There are, probably more than a dozen different services that Westcare offers. And this needs to be funded largely by donations.
Yeah.
And you've done that through the big fundraising dinner that we have annually. Of course, there's been a couple of times that's been cancelled in recent times, but hopefully it'll be back later this year. And other different charities and auctions and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
Does it still blow you away how much the Penrith community gets behind Westcare?
Totally. I can't say it enough. And it's like look, we're not just a charity. We just don't want to be just a charity. When I started at this role, I was told several things. I just knew in my heart. One was, be in this community. Don't just be that charity person comes around looking, don't be that person. Be a community. And little did I really understand at that time that Penrith is such a community. They say it's like a country town. Well, it's not quite. It's not. But I can see why they say that. Because the community cares for its own. And a lot of people have been on a journey themselves, I find. So one of the unfortunate things about being a local needs met by local people organisation is that you do not often fit into funding models for government funding. So for instance, the housing, every few years they'll have an expression of interest for temporary accommodation housing funding. And I'll put a submission in and we'll always talk to them about it after it, and they go, wow, we don't know how you're doing that out there at Penrith, so it blows them away. But the problem is, for their funding model, because we're like a niche solution, so you don't attract that. But what we do attract is wonderful community-minded people who want to see needs met in Penrith. And we see that on all levels. And I'm amazed how the local small business community in particular is just really connected. And I think I think it comes a time of trust. In fact, one well-known guy in town, he told me once he wanted to meet up, and he said, you know what? He said, we don't know if we can trust you yet. We know you through Jeremy and Aaron and this, that, and the other at the coffee club, and been to a couple of your events. And he said, anyway, as a matter of this, him and his wife I met with, and he subsequently handed over a fund for our Christmas appeal that year. Well, let me tell you, he trusts us now, heart and soul. But he put into words what often people can't do themselves. Is it's a thing of trust. And if you're just some fly-by-nighter or something if you're not being real, you're not going to cross over into that trust threshold. And once you do cross over that, something happens. And we have certainly seen that, the buy-in on many, many levels. We're to be pretty much a 100% community-funded organisation. People from all over just can't get their heads around that. Yeah.
Now, for people, people in the business community certainly would know about Westcare. For those listening out there at an individual level, as Westcare moves forward, what can they do to support Westcare? Because can it be as simple as, hey, I'm getting rid of a couch. Now, I'm not talking about the couch that's got your dog stains on it and 22 rips in it, but can it be as simple as, hey, can I donate this? Or is it monetary? Is it what do you need from the community?
Look, it's all those things. I wouldn't say we actually have a need of a lot of furniture stuff often, because I get flooded with requests, and at the moment in particular, our sort of storage management's somewhat limited. However, by all means, pass those inquiries through. But we do distribute a lot of, under our Nepean Homestart program, just other activities. We give a lot of stuff away, a lot of furniture and stuff. So that's in the picture. Look, we run a very lean model at Westcare, and pretty much from a base, the more money, financial contribution comes their way, quite simply, the more work we can do. So, and I'm touched. I mean, let me tell you, you can have a great business or clubs, or grateful for all their engagement in our world. But I see those, we've had several like single mothers who put that $10 bank transfer every fortnight. Let me tell you, that gets me. I'm telling you now, there's something about participating in that, and it touches me more than you'd know, especially when you kind of know some of these people a bit and they've been on their journey, and that's their way. It's just, there's something about that. So even a lot of our fundraising, we do various fundraising things, but what people also might help them understand is that none of that pays for my salary. Every year, our great friends, family at Imaginations, they make a contribution every year, and guess what that is? It's my salary. So I'm out there fundraising, and none of it's not even paying for my salary. And I like that model as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's like straight to that. We have minimal, really minimal administration costs, that kind of thing, and there's 2 of us full-time, 3 part-time, and many, many volunteers. So I think that helps as well. You're not going to get gobbled up in some administrative thing and they get a fraction. We like to cover our bases, and the funds we raise gets poured directly into direct services, and that's just somewhere we want to be. When I first started, the team used to joke. I didn't really think it was that funny, but they joked. They said, you know what, the only people who know about Westcare are the people who use our services and all the volunteers who work for Westcare, and they used to think that was funny. I thought, yeah, that's wrong. It shouldn't be like that. It's a great organisation, and everyone should know. Like all these, sensational organisations around town. Well, I believe that's changed now, and it continues to change. And people discover, and they just think, yeah. And we together, let me tell you, we can do anything, and we are,
Now, one thing, though, that hit you hard was COVID hit everyone, but let's move on from COVID, because over the Christmas period, you had a particularly problematic situation that continues to go on, and it was you guys really looking for even more help and potentially a home, because, can you run us through what happened with the fire there on Henry Street?
Well, that was right out of left field, I must say. On just a few nights prior, 3 or 4 nights prior, there was the big downpour flooding rain we had on the Thursday prior in December, second week of December. And anyway, it flooded some of our building, not our offices, but we're in a council-owned building, Community Connections building in Henry Street, and there's like a dozen organisations in that building. We've got a couple of suites in there. Anyway, several of them were flooded. They had just flooded under the roof, and the ceiling tiles collapsed and all that kind of stuff. And to deal with that, can I just say, this is not the official line. Council is saying this is not the official situation, but my fiery mates tell me this is what happened. So I'm just saying what they told me. Don't want to upset anyone. And they had these fans going 24 hours a day to dry the carpet, and allegedly one of those caught on fire and burnt the building out. So that wasn't, because I'd heard reports there was a fire in Henry Street. Had no idea it was us until we're driving to the office. Suddenly Channel 9 got their cameras in my face and they wanted me to talk, and then Channel 7 got involved, and 2GB. So before you know it, that Monday went a lot different than we had planned. And let me tell you what I also said on that morning to a few people. I said, yeah, look, this is terrible, really. I said, look, we're going to be all right, because I just know how this stuff works in this town, but But I really feel for these other organisations, and I've subsequently learned, it won't be common knowledge, and I probably shouldn't even say anything, but there's a couple of them at least that are going to close down after that, and that's really sad. They're grassroots organisations. They've had other challenges as well, and this is just popping over edge, so that's tragic. What's happened to us is not so tragic as such. Sure, if you saw the footage of our administration office, it's just a burnt, melted, charred mess. Our emergency relief service wasn't burned out as such, but parts of it was, but it's more soot and it's just total. Everything's being written off, so we're right. And so Westcare's technically homeless right now.
But of course, still doing great things, and you've had great support from different places, of course, to house Westcare, which is
just incredible. I mean, Penrith Panthers have been in contact. They're going to very good, generous support of Westcare again. We're working through. They're giving us some awesome office space in the the western part of the stadium there, which is just sensational. We're working very closely with Penrith City Council to because our big thing that we're missing at the moment is our emergency relief service, where we distribute our food, and very important frontline service. So that's something we'll be working through for a little while, to be honest. So but also in the midst of all that, it was the being on the team, and certainly the 2GB segment, where it got out that on that day, we actually had 60 Christmas hampers ready to go. They're ready to go. They're going to go that day, and all this other stuff in there prepared for Christmas. And next thing you know, it was out there that, well, we got so flooded with support. We had meat companies, Strathfield giving us 40 hams. We had biscuit factories giving us stuff. We had GWS Giants get on board, delivering 60 hampers, and many, many, many other things. So much so it come down to it. I looked at the number of hampers we gave out in the next 3 or 4 days, and we got to 935 Christmas hampers. Let me tell you, that was the biggest. And of course, once you see that number, well, you can't stop there, can you? So I quickly rang up Lana from Mama Lana's and said, mate, if we can bring together 65 hampers for you, right? She said, really? And we beautiful. We got 1,000 Christmas hampers. That would never have happened. And let me tell you, it's not just dumping hampers. You can dump hampers across the sector. Oh, no. Our focused goal for our Christmas appeal is really to give Christmas to people who otherwise simply wouldn't have it. And we work with the 30 plus organisations to find the most vulnerable in Penrith at Christmas time. It's remarkable. And this year we found 1,000 homes in our Christmas appeal. Can you believe that?
And that, I guess, shows just in that example there, the Penrith community and the business community's connection with Westcare. Right. Last question, and look, I really encourage people to go out there, just Google Westcare, simple as that, and you'll find the website and all of the information about Westcare and the services that they provide if you need their services, but also if you are able to donate, then jump on. What is the future for Westcare, but also for you in Westcare? I mean, you've been with the organisation, you say, 8 years now. Is this it? Is this the end game? Is Westcare the end game for you? Or are we going to see you out there with some Coca-Cola vending machines again at some point?
Yeah, no, I used to jokingly say, well, not jokingly, so I used to say, I'm going to die in this role, until 2018 when I had a pulmonary embolism and literally nearly died. So I stopped saying those words right now.
Incredibly, on the day or the day before your big fundraising dinner, which is something that you would not miss for the world.
You just can't believe the timing of that. It had nothing to do with the dinner. It actually, the symptoms had been there for a week and a half. When you're feeling like you're coming down with something, it's like, no, our biggest night of the year, I'm going to push through, having no idea it was blood clot stopping blood flow to my lungs. But anyway, no, I simply cannot envisage myself doing anything else but living the rest of my life serving this awesome community with Westcare.
All right, well, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. We do encourage people to go out there and support Westcare. I think we all agree that your enthusiasm for Westcare is infectious, and we really appreciate you joining us.
Awesome. What a great delight to talk to you, Troy. Thank you.
There he is, Andrew Paech from Westcare. I hope you enjoyed our chat. A reminder that On The Record is released every Monday. Just search Western Weekender wherever you listen to podcasts and hit the subscribe button. On The Record is produced by The Western Weekender and recorded at the studios of My 88. Check out westernweekender.com.au. We'll see you next time.